So this is a door frame that I'm making. There's a very pretty door here, which has been cut down a little bit, but you can see from these pegs, 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's a fifth one missing. So from that, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the fifth one. So from that you can see that it used to be 8 inches wide, like the top board, 20 centimeters, and it's completely handmade. So an educated guess would suggest that this door is from about 1800 or before. This also had a lock, an old-fashioned lock of that kind of late Baroque type, which has been taken away and filled in, and it was then being painted with this paint which is Empire style.
And in this area of the country that starts around about 1830, a bit earlier in the capital but later here. And then it has another coat of paint which is painted around about 1900 or a little bit earlier, which is to look like oak, faux oak.
It's brought very curious weather. It's -4 degrees, -5, but raining. It's done that quite a lot this winter. Warm clouds. So it's brought me into the porch here to work. Yesterday was -13 degrees, and it's really cold to stand out and work, but actually it's colder in this wet weather than it is in the really cold weather when it's dry. Clothes work better. Use a jigsaw to do this, but actually the jigsaw blade has a slight tendency to bend. That's a slightly a bit slower, but not always with power tools. It takes time to set up and put away again. But I am going to use a fane saw or multi-tool to cut between. This way of putting the corners together on door frame is traditional. About the time that door was made, maybe, I don't know how much earlier, maybe it was maybe much earlier. You see, in order to for there not to be a gap, it has to have a little step. So when I've cut these out, I'm going to use the cut out pieces to mark up the ones that they're going to go together with. It's pretty tight. They don't really need to be that tight actually, because they're wedged in place when you mount the door. Cutting from the wood. Just as the same as a chisel, just not quite as accurately, but it's a bit quicker. It's important that inside there nothing sticks up. I probably don't need to spend, probably don't need to be too careful with this, to be honest, because as I say, the door doesn't really need, the door frame doesn't need to be completely tight, because you use wedges when you put the frame in, and that's what tightens up the frame, so it doesn't need screws or anything. Right, now I put the next piece on here, and I use a sight line, just looking down the piece of work. I get these two faces to be alike. That's very important, otherwise the door will be drafty when it closes. And once I'm happy with that, nice and steady, using a sharp pencil, one clear line, correct, not two messy ones. There we go. One clear line, and now I'm going to use a set square to mark off the rest. Shall I film that? Yeah, alright. Right, my end isn't absolutely perfect, but then neither do these need to be absolutely perfect. I can measure height using my finger. And then the set square. And then what's very important here is to know which ones you're taking away, obviously. It's so easy to make mistakes with this kind of thing, especially when you're making videos about it and thinking about that at the same time. Right, I'll cut this by hand as well. Okay, I like to leave the line when I cut, at least a little bit of it. Split it ideally. If you leave the line, then you know where your marking was. If you cut it off, you're lost really, aren't you? Okay, having made the preliminary cut with a multi-tool, do the rest with a chisel. A bit more accurate for doing these corners. I don't know. Doesn't really need to be accurate. Thing is, it's almost quicker if you do it right. You don't have to make adjustments. They just fit together. And obviously, that isn't something that you just know is going to happen. Obviously, you try and do it. You have to use your eyes. If it looks good inside, it probably is. If there are lots of bits sticking out, it won't fit. A lot of people make the cut. Well, a lot of people. I'm going to generalise about what other people do. I won't. What I do is learn from my mistake, and I've made the mistake before. That I ignore the mess on the inside of the cut. Some kind of, I don't know, distracted or something. Fantasy that it's going to be correct. Experience has told me that you have to think about what you're doing all the time. We'll be listening to the radio or making YouTube films. The fact is that when it's vertical, you can see it. The little bits that are left that haven't been cut by the saw or the chisel, you can see them. So you have to use your eyes. Now that's going to be very tight. I think I'm probably just going to use hand power to do that, because it's with the wood. Split the line. Is my aim, you know. I obviously don't always do it, but you can always try, can't you? Reminds me of the Buddhist story of, well, it's not a Buddhist story, it's just a way, I think it's Thich Nhat Hanh, it said you can point at the moon and walk towards it, you'll never reach it, but you can always point towards it. this is lovely Harpics rich pine, very, very close grained. This is almost too good to use for a door which is indoors, because it doesn't get any weather. It really probably ought to be used for making windows, this material, because it's so good. So that didn't make that too much difference. It's still nice and tight. Well, still tight enough. That'll go together nicely. Just need to give it a little bang. It's quite good to use the axe for this because I've got a hammer. Because I found that the heavier weight it's less likely to split the wood, simply. I don't know quite why. That's alright, isn't it? Good enough anyway. As I say, it's going to be pressed together by the wedges. I mean, I could demonstrate, just if you want it to be totally accurate, there's a little bit there. And the way I would do that, this isn't the best saw to do this with, because this is quite a heavy, quite a big tooth saw, but you can just put the saw between. Takes up the, and that just knocks off the unwanted bit, and then maybe I can do that at the other end as well. But I mean, obviously I can't do that too much because my line was still there. So I mean, the line is still there now. So I don't want to go any more than that really, because the door won't fit. This has been measured with the door in place, and I've used this as a spacer to give me a little bit of space around. You'll see that later. Now I'm going to show you an alternative way of doing it. This time with the stick, saw. What's that called? Jigsaw. Here we go again. I'm going to try and show you. I have to do it left-handed now because the camera's in the way. That's where I'd want to stand. So I want to cut that bottom edge first with this blade, so that I know it's in the right place. If I start at the top, the blade might go the wrong side of the line and start bending. So I just find one point where I can put the saw so it doesn't jump up and down too much. And I turn the pendulum. Well, I've turned it down. Could turn it completely off, is almost better. And I'll pick up the line. Just to help get the line straight. Doesn't really matter if it does a pendulum motion here. not very good really, but I mean that's the edge that shows, so that's okay. So it just shows the inaccuracy of using that jigsaw. Admittedly it wasn't a new blade, it might have been better if it was a new blade. But the important thing is that this is the visible face. The back side is invisible, I mean it's inside the wall, so any mistakes at that point don't matter. Right, it stopped raining, so I've been able to decamp over here, put this thing together. The whole finesse of this door is that all of the pressure to put the frame together will come from the sides. Because that's where the wedges go. I haven't actually tested this last bit. Let's just check the camera angle. Is that because I'm working outside like this, it's quite likely that the wood will shrink a little. I mean, when it's in, when it dries. All very tight. It's maybe too tight. Get the door and see. Careful my fingers doing this because it's quite sharp edges. The ice makes it easy to move around. There we go, and then that's the idea, is that all the way around there should be space. Otherwise when you put the door in you just have big problems. Yes, that's correct. And same at the other end. That's all more or less perfect. So the thing is that you don't use the square. I mean, you can use it to help a little bit, but you might end up doing yourself a disservice using the square, because the old door isn't square, and I don't want to start planing the old door. It's been planed down enough already. I put the door in the wall, put the frame in the wall following the door. And here there'll be no screws. That's not necessary because, as I said, it's going to be wedged in place. So the wedges will do that job that screws. You just don't need them. Well, maybe I'll film in maybe a few days when we put the door in. I haven't even cut the hole in the timber yet. I'm going to put the roof on first. I went and got the materials today from the saw. Well, it's actually not a sawmill. There's what's called a hövlemester. It's where they plane boards. And this is the state of the new building. We've reused some of the old timber from the barn that was pulled down for the roof construction. Otherwise, there's a bit of windproofing on the outside, which is a kind of fibreboard with bitumen paper on, and then I think what's called OBS boards on the inside, and then paper insulation in the walls, recycled paper. So it's a diffusion open system. Nice, used it quite a lot. Goes well with old buildings because it breathes.
This house, although built in timber, shows some of the traits of Schweizer steel, which in English is called Swiss style. It's a part of that arts and crafts movement. And the building that we're putting on the side here in stick construction is using that same Swiss style. So I'm now going to show you some of the tips of how to cut the parts.
Well, it's getting a bit dark here now. Well, I've got my lights out. I've put it on autofocus and auto adjust, so you'll probably have a lot of squeak noises from the servos in the camera. I've got my lamps on. I can turn up the brightness a bit on those. Let's have a look. Just to explain a little bit, I've got the pendulum motion of this thing on the smallest setting, not 0, but the smallest setting. If you pendulum too much, it's difficult to get around the corner. And I'm trying to split the line, but I don't want to stop. I want it to be an even flow. That's what gives the nicest curve. Let's try again. That's the thing, taking it from different directions wants to spoil it a bit, and the battery wants to flake. It's because it's quite cold. Try again before the battery dies on me. wants to die as well. Alright, well, you've got the idea.